good morning. Welcome to Explore Africa series. And today we're going to be talking about the Benin Empire. We're going to be looking at, as usual, the introduction, objectives, general history, timeline, and conclusion about the Benin Empire or the Kingdom of Benin. So the Benin Kingdom was one of the major powers in West Africa until the late 19th century, okay? And the kingdom was well known to European traders during the 16th and 17th centuries. And the reason for that is trade usually happened right close to area that ship can get to, and it's not far from port. And we'll talk about what made the Benin Empire prominent in those days in terms of trade, what they traded with the Europeans. And now the people of the Benin Empire, who is now known as the Edo people, right, are part of the south of modern-day Nigeria. We'll learn about the Benin Empire and its history, explore its culture, religions, and people, and look at the historical timeline of that empire and how far they went back to the modern day. We can see here in this image, right, the Great Walls of Benin. Can you even believe that this was constructed in the late 19th century? The image we're looking at here, the Great Walls of Benin, this was a very sophisticated, advanced, wealthy society. And this architectural marvel, even when the Europeans got to this place, they couldn't believe that things like this existed in a black continent. To build this must have required a lot of planning, a lot of genius, of architectural genius to be able to build this. And everything was like a round circle, and you have city center, you have the palace right at the middle of the entire kingdom. So we see the evidence of this in the empire architecture, and the landscape showed a well-organized society. And the people of Benin Empire practice mixed traditional African religious beliefs. Yeah, they had different beliefs system there. And the obas, which is the same as kings, are considered a divine ruler and are seen as demigods. Okay, so the obas are like seen at least in the Benin kingdom as the next to God. Obas are more or less even worshipped at that time. So that's how powerful the obas were in those days. The origin of the Benin Empire was not transferred through writings. So there wasn't any literature that wrote down a lot of things, but what was prominent in those days was the tradition, the history of that time was passed on through what they call oral tradition, which is more or less like poetry and storytelling. Some people have the craft and to actually be able to learn, right, and recite the history of that kingdom, or history of the upper family, history of prominent families, and tell it to the next generation by just words. The way they kind of recite it then is they can use it as songs. So they pass that down to the next generation by just poetry and just retelling the story over and over again. There wasn't any writing per se that actually documented the tradition and the history of the empire at that time. So the Benin bronzes, like we see on the right hand side, right, are of huge importance to the history and heritage of the empire. Okay, because you can imagine, we've looked at the architectural marvel, right, and you can imagine this kind of art, the amount of intelligence, the craft that has to go into making things like this. And this is not wood, this is bronze, metal. The amount of intelligence had to go into things like this. And this is not like something that one person made. They had to even learn skills to be able to make this thing. And have again here on the left hand side the Queen Idia. So again, the Benin Empire became powerful through the conquest they made through war. So they were a powerful nation. So it was under Oba Ewuare, the Benin Empire became an empire, as we know it today. So the Benin plaques showed the wealth and power of the king in those days. And there was a lot of examples of, where they used, leopard, artifacts, to kind of, depict, the power of the king at the time, right? And this is how they used to dress, in the day. They have like, necklace, I don't know, that like beads and stuff that, the king, wears. So this is just showing the culture that they had. This leopard head, they used to use this, to give people in the palace, to give them, kola nuts. So you can open it and put kola nuts in it. These are very expensive, artifacts, right? So that they're held now in museums all over the world.
So people have taken it?
Yes, you can say not taken, it's been stolen.
Stolen.
Okay, the Europeans, stole all of these things from Africa, from Nigeria, from Benin Empire, right? And took it to London, took it to Germany, Switzerland, so many places now. They store these things in museums and people are paying money to go and see them in museums. They're very valuable. So as you can see here, so like I was saying, so you can see showed, all the things that, they used to sell in those days in the ivory. So, the Benin Empire, the key economic activities was, trading of ivory and brass. So the timeline, right, from, before the 13th century, which was the formation of the Benin Empire, then between the 13th and 19th century, that was the, the peak of the Benin Empire with a centralized, monarchy led by the obas or kings in those days. Okay, and by the late 19th century, there was British expedition captured Benin City and deposed the Oba. Okay, and why did that British punitive expedition happen?
The king had a very important ceremony, and during that period, the king is not allowed to see any outsider. But the British wanted to see the king, and the soldiers told the expedition team that you cannot see the king. The king is doing an important ceremony, but they carried on. And because of that, the soldiers killed them because they were not allowed to see the king. So the British then used that as an excuse to go in there and destroy a lot of what was in the empire and steal all the artifacts and everything, the artwork, the sculptures, the bronzes and everything. That was what they used to go in there and steal. The king was then exiled. He was not allowed to be in Benin, and it was even an abomination for the king to be exiled. The king even wanted to die. He would have preferred to have died, been killed or committed suicide, but they wouldn't let him. They were like, no, off you go to Calabar, which is far away from Benin, and that was where the king died.
Between 1897 to 1960, we see the British colonial rule, which diminishes the Oba's authority in the empire. Remember, the Benin Empire was mainly monarchy, a centralized monarchy led by a king. But 1960, we know when Nigeria got its independence from the British colonial rule, and of course, as part of the creation of Nigeria as an independent nation, Benin Empire was, became part of Nigeria as we know it today. And of course, in 1991, the formation of Edo State, which is now a state in Nigeria, and Benin City as its capital. So quiz. When was the Benin Empire established? 17th century, 13th century, or 16th century? Question number 2. Where was the Benin Empire located? A. Ghana. B. Egypt. C. Nigeria. Question number 3. What were some of the key economic activities of the Benin Empire? A. Silk production. B. Ivory and brass trading. And C. Gold trade. Number 4. What is the most famous art form associated with the Benin Empire? A. Pottery. B. Mosaic art. C. Bronze and brass casting. Number 5. Who was the highest authority in the Benin Empire? A. Local chiefs. B. Tribal council. C. Oba king. Give me that. In conclusion, we see a sophisticated empire, well thought out and structured. It's just fascinating that something like this existed, and which the Europeans, wanted to deny for a very long time. That, oh no, nothing like this existed. There's no way, a black, empire could have, created, have such a structure or such, an architectural marvel. It shows that a lot of good things, and still good things, come out of the African, continent. So don't let anybody diminish who you are. You're from lineage of intelligent and capable heritage, and that's a fact. So second thing, the empire became economic powerhouse through trade in ivory and brass. Okay, so you see, a lot of these things, made, and of course, the ones that were stolen, from the King Palace were, now, sitting in a lot of museums all over the world. And the Benin Empire expedition is more or less looting of all the things, valuables of the empire, and of course the destabilization of the old empire and destruction as well of the old empire at that time. So thank you very much.